So Footy Adventures, one weekend, 2 games continues. This is part 2. We're here at Western Sydney Wanderers at the brand new Bankwest Stadium, and I must say it's really impressive. It's a brilliant looking modern stadium, holds 30,000 people, and it's a little bit different to what we've seen in the past 2 games, Central Coast Mariners and the Leichhardt Oval. We're both smaller, both very nice, picturesque stadiums, but this is the first kind of massive modern stadium that we've been to. So Sydney FC went top of the league yesterday when they beat the Newcastle Jets. And today, if Western Sydney Wanderers even get a point, they'll go back to the top of the league. They're currently level on points, but basically in the last 2 games we will have seen the 2 best teams in the league. Western Sydney Wanderers were founded in 2012. They've already won the A-League as premiers once, and they've also won the Asian Champions League, the only Australian team to have done so. So quite an impressive feat considering that they've only been a club for a matter of, 7 years? There's only ever been one other Australian team in the final of the Asian Champions League, but they lost. That was Adelaide United in 2008. Western Sydney Wanderers are managed by Marcus Babbel, who used to play for Liverpool. Brisbane Roar are managed by Robbie Fowler, who is also an ex-Liverpool player. Both of them played in the treble-winning season of 2001 when Liverpool were managed by Gerard Houllier. So it'll be interesting to see how both teams line up and how both teams play, see if they've got any of that Liverpool philosophy, and see if the 2 managers before the game embrace each other with a nice big Scouse hug. We're going to go and see if there's anything interesting in and around the ground, and then we'll see you in the match for a bit of pre-game atmosphere, and obviously we'll take you through the game as well once kickoff starts. Pretty poor first 10 minutes of football, but the fans have been the most entertaining thing. It says a lot about the game, but the fans have been fun to watch so far. Still 0-0. Corner for Western Sydney. Still waiting for something to happen. It's been like a chance each with 34 minutes in. Football's been awful, fans have been amazing. Game 4. Corner's about to get taken though, see if it changes, go on. It's come out, edge of the box, they've worked it wide, go on, whip it in son. He's lofted it in and it's gone for a goal kick. Sums up the game. Robbie Fowler in the dugout, technical area there, in the blue shirt. No sign of Marcus Babbel yet. Boring first half, half time, 0-0. And Marcus Babbel in the white shirt. Waiting for this game to spring into life. Fans are still loud. There's nothing happening on the pitch. 0-0. Still. Still 0-0. Some games are destined to be 0-0, this is just one of them. We could keep on playing here for another 6 or 7 hours and I still don't think we'd see a goal. See you in the morning for a recap on the Sydney weekend of football, and we'll tell you which is best. If you guys are watching this, you've made it to the end of the Western Sydney Wanderers video. I've come here nice and early in the morning. I'm currently at Moore Park. It's where the Sydney Cricket Ground is, which is one of the most famous stadiums, I think, within Australia, probably the world. They have actually hosted football games here before. This is part 2 of my Sydney football guide. If you haven't already, I'd recommend you go back and watch the first video, which was the Sydney FC game where they played Newcastle Jets. It will just make the next section a lot more relatable, and you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about a little bit more, because I'm going to be covering both videos. If you remember, in that video I did say that Sydney are playing in a number of different stadiums around the city. Now, they usually play at a stadium just over there called the Allianz Stadium, but I'm going to insert some clips just now. What I did mention in the previous video is that they are renovating the ground. The new stadium, by the pictures on the outside of the building work, do look pretty impressive. That being said though, I'm glad we went to the Leichhardt Oval. It was a brilliant stadium. It was awesome to see the fans in such a small, kind of hostile environment. The pyro was amazing, the atmosphere was awesome, and the game itself was brilliant. It was 4-1. Now, I'm going to cover both games. I'm going to look at 3 different sections. We're going to look at fans, we're going to look at the stadium, and we're going to look at the game itself. But first off, I just want to tell you about the ticket price. The tickets for both games were $25 each for an adult. They were kind of the lower end of the ticket spectrum. I would give Sydney fans a 9 out of 10, and probably the same with Western Sydney Wanderers. The only reason I'm not giving them a 10 is probably just the fact that the stadiums weren't at capacity at the games. But that being said, the fans that were there made so much noise. Both grounds for 90 minutes absolutely went for it. Even the Western Sydney Wanderers game, which was 0-0, which we'll come to in a second, the fans sung from before kickoff all the way to the end. The passion's there. The noise is there, the songs are there, and if you want to come and experience a good atmosphere, then they're 2 brilliant games to go to, and I'd highly recommend both. Stadiums, 2 completely different stadiums, Leichhardt Oval and the Bankwest. One's a lot older, one's been used for different sporting codes here in Australia, NRL, which is the rugby league, which is the Leichhardt Oval. Smaller, generated a brilliant atmosphere, and I would probably give it a solid 8 out of 10. Western Sydney Wanderers Stadium, Bankwest, I'll give it a solid 9 out of 10. It really was spectacular. It kind of takes your breath away when you go in there, and Western Sydney Wanderers have got a brilliant future in that stadium. Okay, and on to the games themselves. By far and away the best game was the Sydney FC game. It was 4-1. There was goals, there was drama, there was early goals, there was fans singing. It was an all-round great game. 5 goals, Newcastle came back into it after being 1-0 down, but then Sydney ended up running away with it, and we saw some top quality football. So I'd give that game a 10 out of 10 easily. You'd go and pay to watch a game like that without any worries in the world. It was brilliant. The Western Sydney Wanderers game, oh, what can you say? I mean, everything about the day was fantastic. The stadium and the fans, like I've already said, but the game itself, it was 0-0. And it wasn't one of those 0-0s where a lot happened and there was a lot of chances. There was probably about 1 or 2 shots on target each. I would give that game probably a 2 out of 10. And it's nothing bad on the A-League itself. It's nothing bad on Western Sydney Wanderers or the fans or the stadium or anything like that. But I think the players will be first to admit that the game was awful. And it looked like both teams were just kind of happy to settle for a point, not to concede a goal, to keep a clean sheet. And Western Sydney Wanderers were keeping their unbeaten run for the season up, which is probably why they were just happy with the 0-0. So if you're like me and you love going on holiday and you love watching football, then come to Australia, come to Sydney and watch some matches. We have already been to see the Matildas, the Australian women's team. That video... But we have already been to see the women's team play Chile at the Bankwest Stadium as well, so that video will be coming up next, so please watch that if you've enjoyed this one. So we have filmed 4 games within Australia already. This will be the 3rd video that we upload. There is going to be a stadium tour from the MCG coming up, which I cannot wait to go to, as well as some more information around the other stadiums in Melbourne. Unfortunately, when we're there, all 3 of the Melbourne teams, Western United, Melbourne City and Melbourne Victory, are all playing away. So perfect timing. Plans for the near future, like I say, we've got Melbourne coming up. After Melbourne, we're going to Singapore and then Kuala Lumpur. There's some stadiums there. I'm not too sure if the games are on at the time, but I'm going to try and take you through the stadiums and some stadium tours. We're then going to go to more countries in Southeast Asia over the course of December, January and February. We're going to try and watch some games there. We've got plans to go to Spain, Germany, Italy, England, Scotland, France, you name it, we're going to go in Europe. Eventually, it might take a little bit of a while to get to certain grounds, but we will get there in 2020, don't you worry. So that is full time for this episode. Please subscribe, please like the video. There's way more coming up in 2020 and the end of 2019, so make sure you stick around for that.